most people are happy to
Exactly.
It's actually harder for people to have a level of freedom, overcome their fear of rejection, overcome their they have tons of fears. And so when you don't give them any direction, you go, hey, go build this. And there is no
blank piece of paper.
They're not going to know what to do with it.
That's not the game.
The amount of not just confidence, but like the courage that it would take for someone to overcome so many fears to get into that world where they can start building something, hoping that you like it.
Yeah, that's not right.
That's a lot.
Welcome back to the Hard But Worth It podcast. It's great to have you back again. We are excited to have Ahab Alhindi with us today. He's going to share his story just a little bit and give you some context for what he's been doing. But we've been friends for just a short amount of time, myself and Ahab. But Mitch and Ahab have been friends for a lot longer. Yeah. And I know together they've watched the journey unfold. Ahab, give us just a little bit of context for what you're doing right now and maybe where you came from, how you got here.
Yeah, so I currently own and operate the Chick-fil-A here in Redding, California. I've been doing that. This will be my third year. I got connected with Chick-fil-A because before being in this brand, I had my own brand that I kind of built from the start. Actually, Mitch's son and daughter-in-law worked for me early on.
Medane, baby.
Yeah, that's right. And we were doing that for about 8 years. And then about 3, maybe 4 years into that, I really felt inspired to I had created a leadership development program for my employees, and it was thriving. It was one of the number one reasons why people wanted to work for me. And so I kind of took that and was like, I need to make this really good. And then I did. And then I said, man, I should start selling this thing. Mm-hmm. And so I started selling it, and we opened it up as a company called Equipping Coach. And my first client was a Chick-fil-A in Pensacola, Florida, and he started running it in his business, and he loved it. And then he started pursuing me like, hey, have you ever thought about Chick-fil-A and becoming a Chick-fil-A owner? And I've always felt like God called me to the city of Redding, like this is where I'm supposed to be. So I was like, no, I'm not gonna leave Redding to go pursue this opportunity.
Because it felt like you'd have to move.
I thought I would have to move because why would Chick-fil-A want to come to Redding?
Yeah.
We're such a small town in the middle of Northern California. Mm-hmm. And at the time they were going big cities in the West, so it didn't seem like it was going to happen. About 6 months after he asked me, he sends me a screenshot of a map with a date on the city of Redding.
Really?
They're coming. And I was like, well, I might want to just pray about it. Like this might be the Lord. So I was like, man, this sounds like a great opportunity. I definitely don't want to compete against Chick-fil-A. And so that's how I got into that process, applied. It's about a 2-year journey. They do a deep dive of your background. It's like they say that like it's easier to get into Harvard than it is to become a Chick-fil-A operator. It's like,
really?
It's hard. The year I applied, there was 80,000 applicants, and they selected 100 of us. And so that's
intense.
It's pretty intense. It's pretty awesome, though.
Yeah.
It's one of the
they got a lot of that gives me a lot of confidence in that operation, what they're looking for and what they're doing.
Yeah, they have that piece dialed.
If
if you're not selected, you either aren't a good fit for the brand, or you don't have what it takes to operate something that's that high volume, and it really can eat some people alive.
I'm sure.
I'm loving. I'm thriving. This is where I'm meant to be right now.
Yeah. Well, we're grateful that you're here in Redding because we love Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, man. It's such a good brand, isn't it?
Yeah.
The raving fans. It's something wild.
So real quick, just because I'm curious, what's your go-to? Like, you're going through Chick-fil-A and it's the thing you got to get. What is it?
I'm actually kind of on a health journey. So
take health out of the way for a minute. This is just like
spicy
sandwich
with a bacon on it. Okay. And then I order a side of mac and cheese.
Oh, mac and cheese is so good there.
But the mac and cheese goes inside the sandwich.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that.
You combine them? Or is this one of these off-menu things they'll do for anybody?
No, you have to combine it yourself.
To do them.
But my son, he started doing it. My 9-year-old started doing it. And I was like, bro, that looks fire. I'm on
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
And so if I'm going to have a cheat day, I'm going there.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's great.
the spicy sandwich.
Yeah.
Last night, you and I had the opportunity to speak at an event that you actually run.
Yeah.
And your portion of that talked about the question, what does it mean to be a visionary leader?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that is a huge part of what it takes to get from where you were to now successfully running a Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And in that talk, you actually brought up some of the high points, the good things about being a visionary leader, and some of the downsides of it.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you can kind of throw that just in brief out on the table for us to dialogue today, because I think it's one of the things that people, well, it's super necessary. We need that kind of vision in our organizations.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people hold that. I think a lot of people hold that in ways that are unhelpful, kind of miss it a little bit. And I'm wondering if you can just throw that out for us and give us an idea of your thoughts of what it means to be a visionary leader.
Yeah, I think some of the pitfalls,
Yeah.
right, of being a visionary is,
Well, first of all, would you say you're a visionary leader?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and how do you know? What does that mean?
I generally, like, mentally am living in the future.
Yeah, that's
Like, I
yeah.
like, so one of the things I mentioned last night is it's so easy. What happens is you live maybe a year out, maybe 5 years out. I'm generally in the year to 5 year out kind of mentality. And so maybe I'm out there, and then I love what I see. Like, I'm like, this is awesome. And then I come back to today, and I'm not seeing what I saw in my mind. So I actually have one of my leaders, he's going through this right now. He's got this vision for our company, and it's like world-class hospitality. That's what we're going to offer our team. And so he's seeing like things that we haven't even tried to work on yet. Mm-hmm. We haven't communicated to our team, and he's getting so frustrated. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you have an expectation in your head that you haven't talked about, you haven't communicated, you haven't done anything about, and it's frustrating you. I'm like, do you realize it's irrational?
Yeah.
Like we've not created a plan for this wonderful vision, and we haven't even started launching it, but you want it to be today.
Yeah, he's already excited because he's already lived it. He's pre-living this in the future.
Yeah, he's in the future. He's
sees
living it.
It's real.
And it's so tangible
Yeah.
that when he comes back to reality or to present day, he's like frustrated, disappointed. And so that's one of the biggest pitfalls is like and so I'm working him through it right now, where I'm saying, okay, you're a year out in your mind. The goal isn't that January 1st, we are that new business that you've created in your head. The goal is by Q4 of next year that we're that new business. Mm-hmm. But we have to reverse engineer and go, if that's where we are at Q4, then what does Q3 look like? What do we have to accomplish in Q3 in order to get there in Q4? And if we're there at Q3, if this is where we are in Q3, how did we get there?
Right.
All right, what did we do in Q2? And if that's what we did in Q2, then what is required in Q1? And he goes, oh, and then he starts doing this. He goes, we have to spend the next 3 months changing people's mindsets. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, so what are we going to do to change mindsets? And I shared the dinner talk that we're going to do. And
tell us about that, because that's fun. That was a great example of how to get this ball rolling.
Yeah. So one of the questions last night was just like, hey, how do you get your whole team on board?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we're about to do this, right? So on November 21st, we're meeting. We're having our directors only, leaders only meeting, and this is our high level leaders. So there's only like 8 people in the room, and we're going to cast vision and make a plan for 2024. And then that Sunday afterwards, we're going to cater a meal for all of our middle managers. So this is our assistant managers, our shift managers, probably about 25, 30 people, and they will be required to attend this. So we're going to pay them to be at this meeting. And what we're going to do is we're going to serve them a high class meal. And we're going to be the servers, and we're going to serve them. And when the meal is done being served, we're then going to break them up into groups, it's going to be some of our kitchen team, some of our hospitality team, some of our drive-through team, all in the same. And then we're going to break them up into groups and go, if your department was world class, what would it look like? How would what feeling would your guests experience? Because what we want to do is we want our guests to feel something when they experience our brand, when they experience our food, when they walk into our dining room. We want them to feel something. And when we boil it down, like me and my leaders, we're saying delight is the word that we're looking for. We want them to be delighted. We want them to be surprised and delighted. Like that's not something that you see at a quote unquote quick serve restaurant. And so we're wanting, and so we're going, okay, what does that look like after that meal?
So you're going to give them an experience first.
Yeah, we want them
have
to
a
feel
reference
something.
point, right?
Right. We want our team to feel something. Go, oh wow! We're not giving any context for that meeting, except for it's a vision meeting, a planning meeting. And so when they come in, they're going to be surprised and delighted that their leaders are serving them a nice catered meal. So it's kind of and then we're going into like, so you guys come up with how we delight people, how do we surprise them, how do we elevate our environment, and then we have to reverse engineer. When you come up with this idea of maybe collaboration between front of house and back of house, okay, what does that look like? What does that collaboration look like? And so as they start coming up with ideas, we're going to have to start asking some questions. So we also have to say, there is no wrong answers here. We want you to be engaged. We want you we want our guests to feel that you are a part of it, not just me, the leader.
It's interesting because vision, visionary, envisioning, all these words, they're so kind of nuanced, and everyone has their own experience around those. Maybe some have negative. It's like we were talking about the word boss and visionary and better words and all this stuff. But at some point, like for you and your leadership, you're talking about a philosophical motivation that you've had deeply embedded, a conviction from back when you were Medane and even starting maybe prior to Medane, the things you were doing. There was a leadership development piece in you.
Yeah.
That fire then caught fire now, and it's the same thing that's been working through. So there is this. It's not new for you.
Yeah.
But this idea of when the visionary. So it's the leader says, I am visionary. Most entrepreneurs that start something, they are the visionary.
Yeah.
That's why it started. And the people who join at first are not. They're joining in on a vision. But you're made a shift, and it sounds like today what you're doing at Chick-fil-A with your team is you're moving from I am the visionary to we are visionary.
Yeah.
Almost as a value, which is an interesting, I don't know if that's true, but there's this level of I'm not just going to be the visionary top-down leader and you listen to my plans and my ideas, but you're trying to now create a spirit of visionary, because this guy who's running with you, and I'm sure even this idea of we're not just going to teach it, but we're going to create an experience so people catch the feeling.
Yeah.
Right. So is that true? And if so, elaborate on that, because there is different work in how you lead, being the visionary and being we are visionary.
Yeah. That guy that we're referencing, he was one of the first people I hired at Medane. He worked with Isaiah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And he's been with me 10 years. Yeah. And he's always had an employee mindset for many, many years. And the more I've pulled him up into leadership and activated his leadership capacity and released him and allowed him, the more he's stepping into like a visionary, which some people think it's not attainable or reachable or teachable. And I'm watching it in him, like it's coming alive in him as something new that he didn't have previously, which is really cool. And then getting him to be the one that goes, this is where we want to go. And I'm like, that's been in my heart the whole time. I'm so glad that you're wanting to do it this year.
Welcome to the conversation.
Yeah. And now I have what I feel like is like as like a business partner in this thing.
Yeah.
Which is it, because I'm like
ownership. Yeah,
because
for sure.
you know, I've said it for. I remember the first time I sat down with my employees at Medane. This is, you know, February 2013, right? This is my old restaurant, 4 employees, and me and my wife. And I told them, I was like, this is, most coffee shops are not very welcoming. And at the time, it was actually really true. Like, you know, you felt like they were teaching you, but like because you were doing it wrong. Like, I want a cafe macchiato, and like, no, it's actually not. That's, or if you're looking for a blended drink, that's not what it is. Like, if you went to a nice coffee shop, they would correct you like crazy. And I told them, I want us to be the Nordstrom of coffee. Like, if someone walked, because I told this story of like how someone walked into a Nordstrom that used to be a Sears, and they walked in with their tires that they bought at the Sears at that building, and they walk into the building, they have these tires, and they're like, I bought my tires here, I want to return them here. And the employee's like, oh, I got to talk to my manager, I can't just take your tires. And he had the receipt and everything, and then the manager comes out and goes, I'll buy those tires off you, and buys the tires, and for the price of the tires, earned a customer. And what I was trying to tell them is like, we want to do it, what we do, customer focused. Like, we want the guest to be the center of what we're doing. And so if they order something, we ask questions, we don't correct them. And so always from the very foundation of where I was, I wanted to give our guests a high quality experience. And what we noticed is our guests loved us for it. We grew. We doubled in the first year, we doubled in the second year, we doubled in the third year in sales. It was really cool seeing that happen. And then we opened the second location, and kind of the momentum was on us, and it was really cool. But getting that mindset of like guests first is really important to me. Yeah. And so,
And it's a vision, but it's a vision also of customer service, but at a high level.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the vision you're running with is really around delighting the customer experience. Even though we're, you know, fast food, quick serve, we can still give them a world-class experience. Yeah. But that's the vision. Whereas others listening in might have a vision for something else. But the key is you have a visionary. At some point, you're trying to empower visionary people. That's a decision you make. It's a style of leadership. And you can kind of flip-flop between both, but you really have to dominate in one or the other because it's an organizational structure thing.
In the realm, we call this thing hard but worth it because it's our way of talking about that there's a thing in the world that's hard. There is no easy button, right? It doesn't, when we talk about mastery, we look at a master and they make it look easy. Because of mastery. It wasn't easy. It was hard for them to get there, right? So there's hard but worth it and hard and not worth it, right? And a lot of what we talk about bad leadership is when people are saying, I need you to do this hard thing. I know it's not worth it to you, so let me introduce some sort of external motivator to get you to do it. And there's a definition of leadership that goes back a long time in the Bass book of Encyclopedia of Leadership, and it basically says, at the beginning of the last century, leadership was getting other people to do what you thought was important. Right? The classic, I'm in charge, go do the thing. Right? What we're talking about are a visionary leader. Well, we could even back up and say that was the leader that would go to the top of the mountain, come down with some vision and say, this is what I want done. And everybody would fall in line, and very much top-down hierarchical sort of thing. Today, what you're talking about is this move that's happened where that doesn't work anymore. The work is too complex. The things we're trying to accomplish are too difficult to get done as a single leader. We need these teams around us. And so in today's world, you have to find a synergy between organizational objectives and personal objectives. And when those things come together, then it is a collaborative shared vision. And if that's not there, then you have to punish or reward people into doing the thing. And I would suggest that having world-class service is not something you can punish someone into doing.
It'd be very difficult.
Very difficult. Or reward them sufficiently into doing. It's like it's got to come from inside. This
Yeah.
inner world, which is the mindset shift.
Yeah.
There has to be an imagination, that it's possible, that and then a value for why, and then they start to contribute to it. And it would be my guess that at that point they're actually able to answer the questions you're describing. Well, what would it look like if we had this? And that person could probably walk around and point to all the things that need to be fixed.
Yep.
And then want to fix them.
That it's funny because I did a walkthrough with all my leaders one by one in their department, and so I take my drive-through director and I said, "Hey, get my truck. We're gonna go through the drive-through," and the first thing I said as we're customers, I'm not the owner. I said, "Get on the walkie, tell them we're coming through, and just treat us like guests." And we pull up and I said, "Is there anything that just stands out to you?" And it's like our sign for the 9-foot clearance is pushed out of the way. I'm like, all right, so immediately that's not even just something wrong, that's a safety violation, right? Like, and we start walking through, driving through, and I'm like, how does our drive-through make you feel? And she's like, it's all concrete, it just feels very cold. I'm like, is there anything we can do about that? She goes, what if we put bushes all along this wall over here? I'm like, it's a great idea. And how's this team member's appearance? His clothes all look too big on him. I'm like, maybe we can buy him a new uniform. And we're just dissecting, and we sat there and just dissected our drive-through. Brought my hospitality director into the dining room and walked her through and just said, is there anything that stands out to you? It's like, oh, our baseboard needs to be cleaned under here. We never see it because we're never on this side of the counter. Okay, great. Our guests see it every day.
Yeah, right.
And just all the little things that she won't see unless she behaves like a guest every now and then. Did the same thing with our kitchen. I said, we're on a tour. We're with a school. We're walking through your kitchen. Guess what? The guest doesn't want to hear the excuses. They want to see a clean kitchen. And it was just such a fun experience because I got to walk through and they pointed out all the changes that needed to be made.
Yeah. Well, the difference too is you're inviting them in by asking questions to see it. Like it's this phrase that we say often. It's a weird phrase, but we say, do you see what I see? Can you see what I see? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, these phrases that in a sense feel kind of weird when we say, can you see what I'm saying? You could try to tell a person all day long, and sometimes we connect to vision that way. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But by inviting them into the process to actually see what you see by asking a question, I think envisions them, because the work of a visionary, the real productivity of what I would say is a good high capacity visionary is they're not just visionary, but they know how to articulate the vision in a way that envisions others.
Yeah.
Because it's not enough to just have visionary as a gift or a style of leadership if it's all in your head and no one knows what you see or they can't see what you're saying. So that sometimes you articulate, but questions I found are a really good way to pull people in, because now they're dreaming, they're beginning to think, and you're giving them permission to think of solutions, which is also a visionary practice. Because at some point, you have to identify the issues in your organization.
Yeah.
And we want to empower our leaders to think visionary about those. How do you solve the problem? Don't just tell me about all the problems. Come to me with a solution, or at least a recommendation that you have. Those are the types of people we want.
So, Ahab, what are some of the pitfalls of being a visionary leader? Where does it get you in trouble?
Yeah, I think what I mentioned earlier, going up there, coming back and just getting discouraged about where you're at.
And then just dropping the whole thing?
A lot of people will just lose the momentum, they'll lose their steam. They can't overcome the hurdle of how big the task is. And anything worth doing is going to be hard, right? Like, so
Totally.
Like, but that's where I always say is, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So if you can build a plan that will create the success, you'll get there. It's just, and being realistic with time. Most guys, most people who are visionaries, they don't have the patience
Right.
to get there. And so they want it just start something, release it, sell it, whatever. Like they just want to like they'll flip businesses like they're flipping houses. But like it's really, if you're building something that's going to carry longevity, long-term impact, it does require the time and effort to put in the work. And culture is one of the most key parts of any organization, any business. And so you have to start there and then build from there. So like that mindset shift that is required is a culture.
That's right.
It's a culture piece that's required.
Yeah.
And so thankfully my business, we've established a really strong culture over the last 3 years. Elevating that culture is a lot easier than building that culture.
Yeah.
Elevating our language is so much easier than building the new language that we're going to have to teach them. Like, so, and that's a win for us. We've done a good job. And what I keep telling them, and I keep telling my team, is we've done good. It's time to get great. Thankfully, we're finally good. Yeah. And then I think another one is the discouragement piece. But whenever you look into the future and you don't have God or you don't have hope, it just produces anxiety. Right. So some people are deathly afraid to look in the future. Like the vision, for a while I dealt with like severe anxiety. Looking in the future was really scary because I was looking into it and I wasn't seeing that glorious world of where I wanted to be. I was deadly afraid that there was going to be a lawsuit around every corner.
So your ability to imagine the future coupled with fear or anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Produces an imagination. It's a nightmarish landscape.
And I wouldn't be able to sleep. It was so real. It was robbing me.
Yeah.
The realness of the future that I created in my head was robbing my life in the present.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like eating me away. Like it was tough. And I had to learn to envision the future I wanted instead of the future that was, potential reality of the negative things that could all happen, that 5% may happen in reality.
It's a huge difference between possible and probable.
Yeah.
Right. And we can build these worst case scenarios and we can tell ourselves that could happen.
Yeah.
It's possible. Right.
Yeah.
But what I find is people who do that really well have a really strong inability to create best case scenarios.
Yeah.
And the best case scenario, honestly, has the same probability of happening. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's not likely. But when you hold those two things as equally possible, you can start to see this landscape in the middle.
What I've seen when I talk to visionaries who go down the negative rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
They come back and they create a plan to kind of protect themselves from that worst case scenario.
Yep.
They have everything that is required to succeed, but they use it in the negative instead of in the positive.
And we call that wisdom. There's a wisdom statement that goes with that. And they say, I want to prepare for the worst and be surprised by the best.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works.
Right.
Yeah.
You accomplish what you prepare for. You accomplish what you pay attention to.
Yeah.
And if you're waiting for the world to fall apart
It will.
and you get everything ready for the world to fall apart and it doesn't, and this is weird, but it's a letdown. And so they kind of create the world that falls apart so they can prove they were prepared for it.
Yeah.
Well, we have a term in our company that we've used for a while now, but it's we plan for the best case scenario. So often we say, we got to plan for the worst case.
Yep.
Right. It's this worst case. We just got to make sure we have a parachute. But we use it in the opposite to just say, no, we need to plan for the best case. So that way, when it comes, we're ready for it.
That's right. Because it's a heavy lift too.
When it comes knock on your door, if you're only prepared for the worst case, then you're going to miss the opportunity when it comes by because you're not prepared for the best case. It's too new. It's too fast. You're not ready for it. I think that's fascinating, just in what you're talking about. In how we can imagine the future in a way that brings fear rather than a sense of hope and faith, which should propel us forward. Because there is a bit of a dance, right? I think leaders who've lived long enough, at least the best leaders in my life, they have a rhythm, the most effective visionary types, where they know when to go up the mountain to get perspective. Because perspective is everything to visionaries. Where you stand determines what you see. And sometimes you need to get up to remind yourself that, there's a bigger view.
Yeah.
But to stay up on the mountain isn't helpful too. So they have that rhythm. They know when to come back down and begin to implement and encourage and infuse that vision to go, hey guys, I was just up and I want to encourage you, just keep plugging forward, just around the corner. There's a view coming up. We're going to be able to take a break. There's a moment here we're going to be able to celebrate. We need the back and forth of it. And a good visionary leader, I think, knows how to do both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think another thing that a good visionary leader does is it's not just telling people where we're going, but the forecasting of like, hey, at about 6 months, you're gonna get really tired of this vision, and here's what the plan's gonna be for you to overcome that. We're gonna double down in 6 months. We're actually not gonna pull back. We're gonna double down because the team's gonna get worn out. You're gonna get worn out on this. We're gonna talk about it so much. At that point, we're gonna actually double down. We're gonna re-emphasize it. Here's the play that we're going to run at that point. We're going to increase everybody's pay. We're going to whatever, right? And that to them goes, man, like when it happens and when they experience it, and they go, and then you come in without having to say anything. Say, hey guys, we're doubling down now.
And it's already preloaded. They know
it's preloaded, and then the level of trust they have in you because you were able to forecast that increases. But you only get that through experience, right? Like so, you go through it, you've seen it in your own life. I think what leaders who don't have the ability to just bring common sense and reality into their business and into their world, that when they just don't say, hey, I've seen this before, this is kind of what happens around the 3 to 6 month mark, and just let it lay with them for a bit. And I always tell people they'll want to make a change, and they'll come to me and they go, hey, I went over to this store, learned how they did food costs. We're going to get our food costs down next month. And I would go, that'd be great if you got it down next month, but I'm giving you 6 months before this is a culture shift in your kitchen.
Yeah.
And then they realize, because I'm like, hey, you're going to get a ton of pushback the first 2 months.
Right.
Then you're going to get some buy-in, and then you're going to get the people.
Yeah. And then it's going to click.
And in 6 months, and it was 6 months almost to the day. It was like consistent good food costs in our kitchen, and I was like, you have to just know that this isn't a switch that you flip in people, where they have to find out the buy-in. Why is this important? How does this affect me? And how do we all win out of it?
There's a concept we live on a timeline, and so there's the now, right? We live in the now, and then future people can go out in the future and they kind of live in the future. And they kind of forget about the now, we'll say. And then there's the kind of person that goes in the past and loves the past, right? They live back there. That's great. And these are just different aptitudes that you can test for. But there's this idea that someone wrote about called deep time, where it's like you drop down deep off the timeline, so to speak, or go up the mountain. And from up the mountain, from this point of view, you can see the past, the present, and the future. And there's another version available of what it means to be in the now. And it's this now that encompasses all of it. And so you can pull from past experience. You can see where you're going. You can also see where you are. And from that spot, you're no longer on the timeline. And so time doesn't exist in a way. Then you have to come back down onto the timeline. And all of a sudden, some of these people, they come back down and they're like, I need that now. Because I saw it in the now. It had already happened. And it's like, no. Now we're back on the timeline. We have to take these steps and execute and implement over and over and over.
Or they'll see a leader that they need in order to accomplish something.
Yeah.
And they'll want to come back and fire their current leader.
Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself the question, is this person have the capacity to be that leader? Do I need to develop them?
Right.
Or do I have to find a replacement for them?
Yep.
But like asking those questions is really
important. And sometimes it's just a matter of the leader creating space for this leader to become. Like that can happen way faster than you think possible, because it turns out that your lack of vision is what was stifling this person. They might already be that person.
Well, and I found too, when people emerge faster, when you're doing the honesty work that you're choosing to do, which I have another question for you on this point, but you're doing this work where you're saying, I would rather tell my employees how hard it's going to be. Here's the vision. And I think sometimes it's romantic, right? We get on a big hike and we're at the trailhead and we can see the peak and we go, there's Mount Shasta, and it's gorgeous. It's snow capped. We can almost see ourselves eating lunch, and it's like we get on the trail and we're hiking. It's like, this is amazing start. But you're saying, yeah, here's a peak and it's going to be beautiful when we get there, but there's going to come some moments, a quarter mile in, maybe 2 miles in, where you're actually going to be walking in the opposite direction, and you're going to maybe think you're going the wrong way.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, that's the time you need to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Because you're going to want to quit, but keep going, because on the other side of this, we're going to get to a spot. When we do that well, I think we see those we love and lead emerge faster. 2 reasons. One is they trust us because we're honest, but they begin to experience and grow in the capacity they need to carry the thing they have waiting for them in their own leadership development when they get there.
Yeah.
Because learning how to lead that crew through the change that you're giving them the opportunity to lead through, the pain of pushback, getting buy-in, that's not easy work. When they realize they can do that, they're now level 2, level 3, level 4 leader,
Yeah.
whereas maybe they were level 1 or level 2 when they started, which is incredible. But a question for you is, you made a decision to lead this way.
Yeah.
Why?
That's a good question. I was more of I will say this, I have controlling tendencies. And I ran my life with these controlling tendencies, trying to control every outcome, trying to control people and scenarios. And when I met a leader who brought me under their wing for about 2 years, his name's Steve Backlund, and I never seen leadership like this in my entire life. Like, I worked with him for 2 years, and he so elevated me as a person, as a leader, as a man, as a husband. Every area of my life became better because I was serving him. And I said, I want to be that guy. I want to be just like him. I want to lead the way he leads. And to be honest, like, I just had a couple who are serving him right now, and they had heard me speak last week, and they told me, like, hey, did you serve Steve Backlund by any chance? And I was like, yeah, like, he's a dear friend, mentor, love him. Like we could hear his message coming through you. And I'm like, yeah, because he changed my life.
So the control feature is, a lot of people who are pursuing leadership start with that tool.
Yeah,
right?
it's a hammer.
It's pretty easy to grab a hold of, right?
Yeah.
And I always say control is the natural response to being really, really afraid and scared.
Yeah.
First thing we do is we try to take control, right? But it's a real challenge to lay that down and pick something else up.
Yeah.
What was your experience that allowed you to actually lay control down to the degree that you have?
It's been a journey.
Yeah.
I remember my wife and I are in our first restaurant, and I snap at her for something, right? I think your son was there. And because she didn't do something the way I wanted her to do it, because we were in business together. And my wife doesn't like public confrontation, and she just leaves. And I go after her, and I apologize, and I repent to her, and I come inside, and I go to every employee that was working, and I said, man, I really blew it. I hope you can forgive me. Never should talk to my wife that way. And I went to each one, and that was me. I had this piece that needed to be in control, needed to be in charge. And it was a big point of tension in my marriage. And as my wife and I started working through, like, okay, you work on this, I'll work on this. And then as I had bigger and bigger team, I think we had 40 people over there at Medane, and we, as if I tried to control everything, I was going to be the ceiling.
It just breaks. It doesn't work.
I was like, well, I'm limiting my influence, my income. I'm limiting my own life if I just don't give more and more away. This actually recently happened at Chick-fil-A for me. I thought I was being this really empowering leader, but I kept a certain section of like profit and loss and expenses and our profit opportunity, all that stuff. I kind of kept that to myself, and we weren't doing great in that area. And I was trying to learn it, and then I sent one of my guys. I said, "Hey, I'm going to open it all up to you. I'm going to send you to this person who's an expert in this area, and I'm going to send you to this person who's an expert in that area, and you guys are going to be able to see my income. It makes me really feel vulnerable having you guys be able to see my income, but I'm going to show you that I trust you." And our profit has increased by 5% since I handed it off.
Yeah.
But there was a control, this fear of like, I don't want them to know how much money I make.
So why did you what allowed you to lay that down?
I think,
or maybe what did you pick up instead? What's the replacement tool? Might be a way to think about it.
Yeah, I think I had to lay it down because
my
embarrassment was already exposed.
Okay, so the downside of laying it down was already there.
Yeah, it was like not sharing it with them.
Yeah.
The only thing that I was doing is I was protecting myself from them viewing me in a different way because they knew my income.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. And so I was, that fear when everything got laid out in front of them of like, hey, Ahab's not controlling this as well as he could because it was too much. It's for one person. I actually have 4 people working on it, and when I finally laid down, it was honestly vulnerability is the antithesis of shame, right? So when I got vulnerable with them and I just got honest with them, it was the shame kind of went away, and I got to just let them see the areas that I was weak and I needed help.
Yeah. So sometimes it can sound like what we're saying is you're losing control, but that has a whole different connotation to it, right?
Yeah.
It's not, or it hasn't become out of control, right? By letting go of control, the thing doesn't become out of control. It doesn't come off the rails.
Yeah.
Right. So in this sense of laying down, not using control as a leadership tool in this way, what are you using instead that is actually having the thing elevate?
I'm bonusing them. To be honest.
Participatory.
Yeah, so they get if my profit is a certain percentage, my key leader gets a bonus. If my labor is a certain percentage, the guy who runs labor gets a certain
sharing.
bonus.
There's generosity.
And there's generosity. And so I made it to where if I make money, you make money. If you're controlling something that allows me to make more money, you can make more money. And that's been a real win for me, and it's been a real win for them.
Yeah, great.
But that was a recent deal.
Yeah.
That was probably in the last year.
Yeah, this notion of control is actually one of the it's one of the things I think that leaders face a lot is how do I deal with that? I'm the owner. It all comes back to me. If they're not going to sue you, they're going to sue me, right? And there's a sense of needing to be in control that then gets outstripped. We use it wrong, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it can be really scary to set it down and open up the books or open up to all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And there's and it seems to be, I watch people bounce back and forth. This is why I think this is important. Visionary leaders often want to empower everybody. We're using this word empower, right? And you empower people until something goes wrong or to a point, but underneath there's this controlling thing. And these two things battle back and forth. It can feel like that.
I think most people, when they empower, don't give enough direction.
Right.
Empowering does not mean go do whatever you want.
Right.
It means go do what I want you to do. This is the parameter.
And then how is that not controlling? That's the difference right there.
Yeah. So here's a barrier over here and over here. Controlling would be the barriers are way
stifling.
tighter.
Right.
It's like there is no room for your imagination. There is no room for your flavor. Your barrier is kind of over here and kind of over here, and it's like the bullseye thing that you mentioned. That he mentioned this to me once, where you put a bullseye out in front of you, and the main job of the bullseye being out in front of you is to tell you that you're not shooting that way, right? And so, like it gives you. That's kind of what the empowerment looks like. If you don't give them a bullseye, then they don't know that they're not supposed to shoot that way, that they're supposed to shoot that way, and they're not shooting that way either. It gives them a direction, and I love clear directions. So one of the parts of our leadership is if you have to create an expectation for your person that you're leading. You have to make sure that they have the resources that they need and the skill that is required. Those are the three pieces. And then if you give them the expectation and they're thriving, and you give them the skill and they're thriving, and the resources and they're thriving, then you can celebrate them. So we call this ESRC. And if you give the expectation and the skill and the resources and they're failing, then that's when they can get the consequences. And so we use that model.
Yeah.
And so whenever someone fails in our business, and I'm like, have you told them yet that they're failing?
Right.
No. Then you haven't created the expectation for them. Have you given them the skill in this regard? Have you given them the resources? Has any of this been done? No, then actually you're the one that gets the consequence.
Right. Right. You didn't do your job.
You didn't do your job.
There's a job here, right?
Because I've given you that expectation.
Right.
Well, and I would make the point that we can't really empower those that we lead if we don't define the expectations.
Yeah.
Empower them into what?
That's
right?
what I mean.
It's like,
but we can use the word "you're empowered." Here's a blank canvas. But in all fairness, like studies have shown, like even little children on playgrounds, like when you remove the fence on the school yard, most of the kids draw close to the center of the playground. They don't feel empowered because there's no defined boundary.
That's right.
There's no parameter set. The minute you give a fence, kids play to all the edges.
That's right.
As far because they feel the sense of it's defined. And I think as leaders, we do that when we define the parameters. We can actually empower and say, go play to all the edges. You know when you're in, you know when you're out.
Yep.
And when we don't do it, I think we're more abusive, maybe playing in I don't even know where that spirit comes from.
Well, it's a manipulative process because they're there. The boundaries are there, but you're making them guess.
Right.
That's
right. Exactly right.
It's the silent fence, and you get to be capricious. You get to be in whatever mood you're in today, and then the new boundary shows up. It's a very low accountability on the leader that does that. They don't want to be held accountable. To actually do it, because it's hard to define the boundaries and the parameters, the restraints in the right place. I think that's actually relatively difficult to do.
I think you're exactly right, because the leader does know where the target is.
They do.
And it usually shows up the minute you're like, you're doing it the way I didn't want. Well, I just wasted 6 weeks.
Right.
I mean, think of like the schizophrenia we put our employees through, or some people. It's like, we said it's an open checkbook or it's a blank canvas, and all of a sudden, actually go this way. No, actually go this way. It's like, give me a break.
If you wanted me to do that, I would have done that.
Right.
And most people are happy to it's actually harder for people to have a level of freedom, overcome their fear of rejection, overcome they have tons of fears. And so when you don't give them any direction, you go, hey, go build this. And there is no
blank piece of paper.
They're not going to know what to do with it.
No, that's not the game.
The amount of not just confidence, but like the courage that it would take for someone to overcome so many fears to get into that world where they can start building something, hoping that you like it.
Yeah,
that's
not right.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. You don't pay them enough.
It's a lot. And it requires the visionary leader to grow and continue to grow, because what started as easy to envision when you were maybe in startup mode, now 2 or 3 stages in, you're running into struggles where your people don't know where to run. You're blaming them for things being built wrong. It's because you haven't grown as a visionary leader.
Yeah.
Because if we grow, what we do is we learn the process is hard. Like what you're talking about is we got to go into the future and we see a vivid description of it, a preferred future state.
Yeah.
We bring it back to the present, and now we have to define goals and break it even down further into, weekly and quarterly, and you have to define it in steps, or you're never going to get to that bullseye, even though hitting the bullseye
There's
is
no bullseyes
possible.
in life. Yeah.
But we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Without that, I mean, you're just kind of, what does it say? Without a vision, people perish. They wander around aimlessly. We have to learn how to write the vision down so people can run with it.
Yeah.
These are works of the leader.
I think this is one of the hardest parts of leadership, of that visionary leader. And I'm distinguishing now between leader and manager. And I'll use the definition that leaders are the ones that are tasked and responsible for creating organizational objectives, for having that big picture, the visionary thing, and then actually establishing these, we're going over there, right? That sort of notion. And then managers are often tasked with doing the work to get us there, figuring out the details. Okay, given that, what are the implications on my area of responsibility? But the leader, that person that has to be, or group of people that are creating the shape of the organization, putting the boundaries in place, creating the restraints we're going to live within that then cause the creativity to emerge. I think that's one of the hardest parts today. And if you go back in time, think about monarchies. Whatever came out of their mouth just was true. Yeah. They didn't have to think this stuff through. If I don't like you, then off with your head, and that's just right. That's the moral good. How easy is that as a leadership mode? Today, we don't get to do that. We actually have to create something that then even the leader serves. Because an organizational objective is not the leader's goal, I don't think. I think it's the company-wide goal that then everybody has to pull together to serve, even the leader. It's not the leader's goal. The leader has a goal relative to that. Doing that kind of work, to me, is the new thing in our ecosystems. We're 40, 50, maybe 60 years into a process of learning how to do that. And the key to it is when you get that engine running, intrinsic motivation is the thing that is most likely to emerge. If I work for you and you are just telling me what to do all the time and then either punishing me or rewarding me into it, that's external motivation. And that works, but I'm not bought in. It doesn't necessarily have to align with me. But when you invite me into the vision, when you invite me into the process of understanding what we're doing, then I don't have to anymore. I might want to.
Yeah.
Right? Getting those systems right, figuring that out, incredibly difficult, in part because we are often even figuring out what the business is along the way.
Yeah.
It is like setting sail in a ship that's half built and then going around at sea looking for more lumber, right?
It's so often they need the why behind
They need the
things.
why.
Like we did something. I had this conviction the other day, not the other day, it was back in August. And I was like, why does my guest get a different experience at 9:55 p.m. than they do at 7:55 p.m.? At 7:55, they get a normal.
Because 10 is closing time?
10 is closing time.
So that's a fascinating question.
And so I started looking at what was happening, and they would tell me, oh, yeah, it's 8 o'clock, we're starting pre-close. I'm like, what's pre-close? Oh, we start, cleaning, making this for tomorrow, doing that for tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to observe. Can I just be a fly on the wall? And like half my dining room is shut down. Okay. And then our sales are really not that great. And I'm like, okay, sales kind of stink. And that's probably why they think they can pre-close, is because the sales stink. I'm like, okay. I went up to one of my ladies. I said, hey, I want my guests at 9:55 to have the same experience as my guests at 7:55. I want them all to have the best experience possible. I was like, but we're not going to get there overnight. So I want you to switch pre-close from 8 to 9:30. But create a plan, roll it out in a couple of weeks. And she's like, okay. So she creates a plan. She rolls it out a couple of weeks later. all of a sudden our 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock sales go up
Because you don't look closed.
because we don't look closed. And so we're doing all this, and now
Yeah.
it's been a couple months, and I'm like, hey, we're now going to 10. No more
Yeah.
pre-close till we're closed. It's just going to be called closed.
That's right.
And so one of our managers, he's like, I don't understand. Why are we doing this? We need to pre-close. And this is what my leaders told him. He goes, our goal is to give our guests a world-class hospitality experience
All the way to 10 o'clock.
anytime
good.
during the day.
I love that.
Are you on board with that? And he's like,
So good.
he goes, yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
He goes, can you just start closing at close? Yeah, I can do that. And but he gave him the why, and the why was enough. Like world class, it gives you put the purpose to the work. It's like your pain has a purpose.
Yes.
Like it's going to be a little bit more painful,
Yeah.
but it's going to be worth it.
Right.
So it was so cool that conversation happened today, and I got to be a fly on the wall, and I was like, man,
There it is.
the vision, the purpose really pulled him in. He goes, I actually want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Work that matters for people who care. Right?
Yeah.
Ahab, thanks for spending the afternoon with us.
This was awesome.
Thanks for building a world-class experience for us.
We're working on it.
Can't wait for 2025.
And it's the spicy chicken with the mac and cheese.
Gotta
on
get the
my
bacon,
next cheat
too.
day, and the bacon. There
Don't
you
forget
So
the
everybody, I want you to do one thing for me in the next week. I want you to go down and get a spicy chicken, put mac and cheese in the middle of it, get the bacon, and then hold it up, and I want you to say,
Yeah.
thanks, Ahab.